A few years ago, I was working graveyard for a gas station convenience store. I'm a female and was 25 at the time. Graveyard shift always worked alone from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. Every night, I would lock the doors at around 2 a.m. so I could close out my drawer, stock the walk-in cooler, mop the floors, etc. When I was doing this, I would put a sign on the door that I was temporarily closed for cleaning, but would open again in 45 minutes. So one night, I have the sign up and doors locked, and I'm in the back office getting a bunch of bottled drinks ready to stock the cooler. Suddenly, I hear a loud banging on the doors. I look at the monitor on the desk and I can see a huge man at the doors, obviously pissed off. I waited a little while, hoping he would just give up and go away, but he kept pacing back and forth, banging on the doors, and jostling them back and forth hard. I was afraid he was going to break the doors down. Finally, I went out and told him that I was closed for cleaning and that I'd be open again at 3, and then I just kept walking to the cooler, hoping he would see that I was busy and just leave me alone. He finally leaves, and I breathe a sigh of relief as I continue my work. I finish all my duties, and all that's left for me to do before I open again is to take all the garbage out. So I grab the bags and head out the door. As soon as I walk out of the door, a figure across the parking lot rounds the corner of the building next to mine. I pause and realize it's the same guy, and he's dragging a baseball bat behind him, walking straight at me. I just stood there, unsure of what to do. If I dropped the bags and run inside, I would have to run around the counter and flip the maglock switch to lock him out. But he was too close. He would make it to the doors before they locked. Do I just keep walking towards the dumpster? All this was going through my head in those couple seconds. I was paused, freaking out, not sure what to do. Right then, as I'm sure this man is going to kill me, Ricky, God bless that wonderful bastard, Ricky pulled into the parking lot. Ricky was one of the night stock crew at the Albertson store across the street from my store. He would come in every night for a fountain drink, but tonight he was late and simultaneously right on time. As Ricky pulled in, the man looked at Ricky and then changed his course and headed towards the door instead of straight at me. Ricky looked at me and could tell I was terrified. The man leaned his bat against the wall outside the door and walked in. Me and Ricky followed him in. I went behind the counter and Ricky got his drink, then asked if I was okay. I begged him to please stay with me until this guy left. He agreed and we waited, nervously making small talk while we watched this guy. Finally, the guy comes to the counter with a large Slurpee and tries to pay with his EBT card, food stamps. I explained to him that Slurpees are not an approved EBT item and that he will have to use another payment method. So he grabs the Slurpee and dumps it on my floor. I flipped the fuck out. Nobody messed with my freshly mopped floors and gets away with it. I screamed at this guy like a psychotic banshee to get his piece of shit out of my store. He was screaming crap back at me, inching his way out the door. He was hanging out the door trying to reach for his bat, but he had to slip just out of the door to reach it and click. I had the maglocks engaged. I immediately phoned the police and thanked Ricky, who then quickly scooted out to get back to work. After the cops finally show up, they caught the guy and tell me he is a local vagrant that was in and out of prison for rape and molestation, and that he also had been in and out of the mental institution and apparently was off his meds. When my boss came in to take over the morning shift, I completely broke down. I was shaking and sobbing and terrified. I told her that she either needed to move me to day shift or schedule someone to work nights with me so I wasn't alone. She said she couldn't do either, so I quit. I regrettably used to work at a hotel in our town. Our town had gotten hit by a hurricane a few months back, and a lot of houses were badly damaged, so a lot of people vacated the place. The hotel is about a 20-minute walk from my house. The town and hotel name I'll leave out of this, as I really just don't want anything traced back to me. The hotel was a very standard bed and breakfast type place, where they serve wet scrambled eggs, frozen sausages, and assorted cereals. The hotel had a busy month after the hurricane, as some people were out of their houses due to damages. But after a while, things quieted down, if anything, quieter than before the hurricane. I always worked nights from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Then someone would relieve me at 2 a.m. and they worked till 10 o'clock or 11 a.m. I could always see how many people were checked into the hotel, and at the time, it was only maybe 9 rooms, which wasn't a lot at all. I could go the whole night sometimes without seeing anyone. There was a back break room for employees with a coffee machine, fridge, table, and a couple of sofa-type chairs. The employee bathroom was also back here. At night, I spent most of my time back here. There was a bell at the front desk that people would ring if they needed anything. I was in the back when I heard a deep voice from the lobby saying, "Hello," repeatedly. I got up and went through the door leading to behind the counter and saw a man on the other side of the glass. There was a glass barrier with an opening underneath about 10 inches high. He said he needed towels. I grabbed him a couple of extra towels and slid them under the glass for him. He grabbed them rather aggressively, shot me this weird look, then walked to the room's hallway. I stayed in the lobby, now sitting in the rolling chair by the monitors, and I just watched that man on the camera walk down the hallway. He was looking around weirdly, then he started rubbing the towels on his face. I said out loud, "What in the world?" Then he got in the elevator, so I went back to the break room. It was maybe 10 minutes later when I heard a voice again from the lobby. It was the same voice. I walked back out, and that man was standing on the other side again. He said very loudly, "My key card is broken." I asked what his room number was. He said it was something random like 2 something with a letter in it. Our hotel room strictly had numbers, no letters, so I knew this man was lying. I told him, "Sir, our rooms don't have letters. Are you sure you're staying here?" His reaction was not something I was expecting, nor was it something I wish I ever had to be victim to. He threw the towels on the floor, started smiling slightly, tilting his head as he got closer to the glass. When his face was practically pressed up on the glass, he said, "I'm going to kill you," still with a smile on his face. Then he said it again, louder and again. Each time he said it, it got louder until it was almost a scream. I screamed back at him, "I'm calling the police," and I did. I picked up the phone and showed him as I dialed 911. He kept his disturbing smile as he now started mocking me calling the police. As I spoke to the dispatcher on the phone, explaining very loudly what was happening in front of my face, the sick man laughed and headed for the door in a slow walk. I told the dispatcher he was leaving, and when he was gone, through the doors and out of sight, I said he was gone. She asked me if I still wanted an officer to show up, and I said, "No, it's all right." So the next couple of hours of my shift went slow. I decided, for obvious reasons, to hang around in the lobby now instead of the break room. There was one guest who checked in during this time. At around 2 a.m., my relief came. I clocked out and was free to go home. I walked outside to the parking lot. It was cold out. I remember wishing I brought my coat. I walked with my hands in the pockets of my light jacket and my hood up. Then I heard a voice in the parking lot. I turned around. Then I heard a voice in the parking lot. I turned around. There was a line of bushes that covered the first floor windows of the hotel. It came from the bushes. I don't know what the voice said. I didn't care. I walked faster now. Once I got out of the parking lot, I was on a main road for a brief minute, but there were no cars on the road in this quiet town at this hour. After a minute, I turned left down a residential street that would eventually turn onto my block. It was dead, silent, out not even the sound of any distant traffic, just the sound of my shoes hitting the pavement, and then the sound of someone else's shoes hitting the pavement behind me, only it was the sound of someone running as if on their tiptoes trying to be quiet. By the time I turned around, they stopped. There was a car right behind me, and I almost knew that there was someone hiding behind it. I heard laughing, and then a familiar voice saying quietly, "I'm going to kill you." Without even seeing him, I knew it was that man. I looked around, planning out my next move. I couldn't outrun a man, let alone wearing my work shoes. I looked at the nearest house. It had an upstairs light on, someone was awake. I would go, run, and ring the doorbell for help. I looked back at the car, and I saw him, that man, peeking his eyes out from behind the car as he inched around it to the front. When he got to the hood, the rest of his face and upper body were exposed, and I could see his disgusting, crazy smile again. I ran for the house screaming, "Help me!" I made it to the front door and rang the bell at least 3 times, and that's when the man grabbed me and started choking me, whispering in my ear, "Die." In that moment, I thought my life was flashing before my eyes. Then, An angel in the form of a man opened the front door to the house and screamed, "Hey!" at the man choking me. The man's grip was released from my neck and I fell to the floor. I never turned to watch the man run away, but the man from the house helped me up and brought me inside. He gave me water and called the police for me, and I explained the whole story to the police. They collected the CCTV footage of the man from the hotel and put feelers out to track him. I was called into the police station when they did a lineup of people who looked similar to the man on the CCTV footage, and I was asked to point out which man I thought was him. I looked at all 5 of them for like 5 minutes, and I ultimately said it wasn't any of them. I don't know if the pressure and nerves got to me, but in the moment, I truly didn't recognize him to be in that lineup. I hope to this day I didn't make a mistake and let that man roam free. I work in the pro department of a home improvement company. I work the closing shift with another cashier, whom I'll call Nicole. Nicole's a really kind but quite timid cashier. She's also very pretty, so she has a lot of contractors hit on her. It's usually not that worrisome. The few compliments, maybe a dinner invite, which she'd politely decline. I would probably ask her out as well if it wasn't for one detail. Nicole does have a girlfriend, so being hit on by guys on a daily basis makes her rather uncomfortable. When we first met, I told her she ought to tell those guys about being gay, but she kept saying it wasn't any of their business, so she kept that part to herself. Nicole has become my best friend, and having another cashier there with you keeps things from getting lonely. We even cover for each other's lunch breaks. One day, when I came back from lunch, Nicole started telling me about this rather creepy guy who was flirting with her. She said she politely turned him down, saying she was with someone already, and while he didn't seem happy, he did leave. I shrugged it off as nothing more than the usual horny guy and laughed it off. But later that day, the man came back. Nicole wasn't there, as she had left to help a customer find some lumber, so it was just me. He looked rather normal, probably handsome to most women, but he acted off. After looking around the area, I asked him if I could help him with anything. "I'm here to see Nicole," he told me. I asked him how he knew her, and he said he had come in earlier and asked her out, to which she said yes. So he had come back in to pick her up. I told him she had left for the dire, usual lie everyone tells to cover for their friends. His smile went away as he started looking annoyed. He said he wanted to speak to Nicole and ask her out again, which contradicted what he had just told me about accepting his previous invite. I told him he could not do that, which caused him to cross his arms and ask me why not. I'm not the best liar when it comes to making up excuses on the spot. However, I didn't want to tell him Nicole was gay if she didn't want him to know it, so I just blurted out that Nicole was my fiancée. His annoyed look turned to confusion as he asked me how someone as pretty as she is could go out with someone like me. I'm not a Jason Momoa or anything, but I don't think I'm that bad looking. I told him it didn't matter and that she and I were getting married in a couple of months, so he needed to back off. He gave me a death look but didn't say anything. After an awkward silence, he left. After Nicole had gotten back, I told her what went down. She asked me to describe him, and after I told her what he looked like, she said that was the same guy who came in before. She was a bit creeped out by what went down, but she found the fiancé excuse rather funny. She even stated she'd rather be engaged to me than go out with him, which I'm guessing was a compliment. A couple of weeks went by and we had all but forgotten about the man at this point. But one night, after it had gotten dark, Nicole and I were getting the trash together so we could close down the registers and go home. Just then, we heard a bang at the door, causing both of us to nearly jump out of our skins. It was the guy again. He had a wild look in his eyes as he kept his face pressed against the glass. "We're closed," I tell him, but he insists he needs to come in. Nicole yells again to tell him she's not interested and for him to go away and leave her alone, but he yells that he's not here for her, he's here for me. He then says that if he can, quote unquote, take out her husband, then she'd be all his. Based on that, he wanted to kill me. I tell Nicole to run to the manager's office and call the police, and I'll stay here and watch him. I won't lie, though I was pretty afraid to be in that tiny little area if the guy was able to get in. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he could have had a weapon on him. Plus, the store doesn't allow us to have self-defense items on us, so I was on my own here. The guy then started ramming the sliding doors like he was crazy. The doors were rattling. I could have sworn they were going to come off their base. Just then, Nicole comes running back around the corner with a 2X4 in her hand, yelling that the cops are on their way. Finally, the man decided to leave. The closing manager met the officers when they came, and he took them to review the cameras. Thankfully, the man was caught and arrested, but neither Nicole nor I felt safe working there any longer. We're still friends and even attend the same college together, but we do have separate jobs now while we pay our way through classes. I'm glad she was there to help me with the rogue man, as I hate to imagine what he might have done to me or worse, what he might have done to her. She says she's glad I was there for her as well, as having a guy around tends to make men like him less confident in what they might try. It was a wake-up call for me as to how dangerous it can be for some girls when an interested guy just doesn't want to take no for an answer. So, this happened a little over 2 years ago, and I wanted to share it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson I learned. It was 2022, and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights, Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, nothing exciting, just checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, or the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training I had to endure. So it was my first night alone on the night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork when a man walked in and asked if we had any rooms available. Usually, if someone sketchy comes in, my boss has me lie and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course. Just for one?" And he replied, "Yes." So I began creating the reservation on the computer when I noticed he started swatting the air and making spitting noises as if he was being surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't my business, so I tried to check him into the room as quickly as possible. I gave him his key, and he was on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction to what happened next. The man came back from his room and slammed his hand on the glass door, causing me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I looked up to see him just staring at me. He cracked the door and put his head through, saying, "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my room?" My only defense was trying to be helpful, so I replied, "Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he's the one who trained me. Though it was in the middle of the night and he was asleep, I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back. I went into absolute panic mode. I ran into the back office, locked the door, and pulled out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when working at night. I heard the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Hello? Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground by just calling the police when I was feeling scared, I decided to take the situation on alone. I replied, "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." I then started calling Michael over and over for help, no answer. I decided to take a few breaths and then step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I started hearing him talking to himself angrily, saying, "Kill her, kill her." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he came out and I said, "Your key was broken. I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room." He agreed. Thankfully, I was wearing a long-sleeve sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I began to walk outside, and he seemed insistent on walking behind me. We began making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stopped at a room, and I stopped at his room a few doors down. I smiled and said, "Oh, that's the wrong room." "This is your room," as it clearly said on the door. This whole time he was going to someone else's room and trying to open the door. After letting him into his room, I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. I found out there was a lone woman staying in the other room he was trying to get into. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns over. I felt bad for confiding in him about the guy, but he seemed willing to keep an eye and ear out. The next night, the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told him, "We're all booked up." I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take it very seriously. I continued to work there on the night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened, but this was one of the worst. I've worked as a night security guard for a few years now. It's not a bad geezy money for the most part, and the quiet is something I've grown to appreciate. After all, in this job, a peaceful night means a successful night. The building I'm stationed at is a corporate office downtown, one of those glass towers that looks impressive during the day but feels almost haunted when it's empty at night. Most nights, I'm the only one here. I sit in the security office, monitor the cameras, patrol the hallways a couple of times, and lock up the place. It's monotonous, but I prefer it that way. The quiet hum of the building systems, the soft glow of the security monitors, it all became routine. Then there's Martin. He's the janitor on the same shift as me, and from the moment I met him, something about him didn't sit right. He's an older guy, probably in his late 50s or early 60s, with thinning gray hair and a way of moving that's too quiet. I don't know if it's his hunched posture or the way he always seems to appear without making a sound, but I can never shake the feeling that he's watching me, even when I don't see him. At first, it was just a gut feeling, nothing I could put my finger on. He was polite enough, keeping to himself and occasionally nodding if we passed each other in the hallways. But over time, the strange occurrences started to add up. One night, I was doing my usual rounds, checking the locks, walking the hallways, when I saw him standing in one of the empty offices on the 16th floor. The lights were off, but the glow from the hallway illuminated him just enough. He wasn't cleaning. He was just standing there, staring out the window. His reflection in the glass looked wrong, distorted somehow. I stood there for a moment, unsure of whether to say something. It felt like I was intruding, even though I was technically the one supposed to be there. Finally, I cleared my throat. "Everything okay, Martin?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He didn't turn around, completely ignoring me. He just kept staring out the window. I waited a few more seconds before walking away, the unease settling deep in my gut. That was the first time I felt like something was seriously off with him, but it was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing other small things at first, but enough to raise alarm bells in the back of my mind. For one, Martin would always be in places where he had no reason to be. The janitorial staff had their designated areas, but I'd find him wandering the upper floors at odd hours, sometimes just standing in the middle of a hallway as if waiting for something. The worst part? He would always seem to vanish the moment I turned the corner. I'd see him in the reflection of the glass doors, but by the time I reached that spot, he was gone. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid. It's easy for the mind to play tricks when you're alone at night in a massive empty building. But then things started happening that I couldn't explain. It started with the cameras. One night, I was watching the security monitors when I noticed static on one of the feeds. That's not unusual. The cameras glitch from time to time. But this was different. The static would flicker for a second, and then Martin would appear on the screen, standing perfectly still in a hallway I knew I had just checked. He wouldn't move, wouldn't clean, just stand there, staring at something off camera. Then, just as suddenly, the feed would cut out, and when it came back, he'd be gone. At first, I chalked it up to a technical error, but it kept happening. Always the same camera, always the same unsettling image of him standing in the middle of the hallway, staring into nothingness. And then there were the items. Things started going missing from my desk, a pen here, a key card there. I thought maybe I was just being careless until I found them in strange places in office supply closet that hadn't been used in months, or a stairwell nobody ever used. How were they getting there, and why? The night everything changed, I decided to confront Martin. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow involved in the strange happenings around the building. I didn't know if he was messing with me, trying to scare me, or if something darker was going on. but I needed answers. It was a little past 2 a.m. when I saw him again on the cameras. He was on the lower level near the basement place. He never had any reason to go. I watched as he stood outside one of the maintenance rooms, his hand resting on the door. This time, I wasn't going to just watch. I grabbed my flashlight and headed downstairs, moving as quickly and quietly as I could. The lower level was colder than the rest of the building, the air thick with the hum of the HVAC system. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, amplifying the growing sense of dread in my chest. When I reached the maintenance room, the door was slightly ajar and Martin was nowhere to be seen. I hesitated for a second before pushing it open. Sighed. The room was filled with cleaning supplies, tools, and spare parts for the building systems. But something felt wrong off somehow. I shined my flashlight around, the beam cutting through the dimly lit space, and that's when I saw it. A door. Not a regular door, this one was hidden behind a large metal shelving unit, almost as if someone had intentionally tried to conceal it. My heart raced as I moved the shelf aside, revealing the door fully. There was no handle, just a small keyhole and a rusted plaque that read, "Authorized personnel only." I knew I shouldn't go in. Every instinct told me to turn back, to leave this room and forget I had ever seen it. But my curiosity and fear drove me forward. I found a key on one of the shelves that fit the lock, and with a deep breath, I turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow stairwell that led down into darkness. I don't know what possessed me to go down those stairs. Maybe it was a need to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind, that there was a logical explanation for everything that had been happening. Or maybe it was the realization that I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. The stairs seemed to go on forever, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. The smell hit me first, musty, damp, and something else, something metallic. My flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom, casting long, distorted shadows against the cracked cement walls. At the end of the hallway was another door, this one even older, its wood warped and splintering with age. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. The cold metal sent a shiver up my arm, and with a sense of impending dread, I pushed it open. What I saw inside will haunt me for the rest of my life. The room was small, no bigger than a storage closet, but it was filled with items, boxes, and shelves overflowing with photographs, clothing, personal effects, and then there were the more disturbing things: tufts of hair, blood-stained rags, and bones. I stumbled backward, barely able to comprehend what I was seeing. In the center of the room was a small, rustic cot, and on it lay a faded photograph of a family Martin's family. Suddenly, the door behind me slammed shut. I spun around, my flashlight beam shaking as I frantically searched for a way out. And that's when I saw him, Martin. He was standing in the doorway, his expression calm, his eyes glinting in the dim light. He didn't say a word, didn't need to. The look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He had been waiting for this moment. "You shouldn't have come down here," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a step back, my heart racing, my mind scrambling for a way out. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice shaking. Martin smiled a slow, sinister smile that sent chills down my spine. "This," he said, gesturing to the room around him, "is where I keep the things I care about." I felt bile rise in my throat as I realized what he meant. This wasn't just a storage room. It was a shriny tomb. I didn't wait for him to make a move. I bolted toward the door, pushing past him with all the strength I could muster. He reached out, trying to grab me, but I managed to break free, running up the stairs, 2 at a time. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps heavy and deliberate, but I didn't look back. I burst through the door at the top of the stairs, slamming it shut behind me. My hands shook as I fumbled with the lock. I didn't stop running until I was back in the security office, slamming the door and locking it behind me. I called the police, my fingers trembling as I dialed, barely able to explain what had happened. The police arrived within minutes, but when they searched the building, Martin was gone. The room in the basement was exactly as I had left it, but there was no sign of him. They found evidence enough to launch a full investigation, but to this day they've never found him. I quit the job the next morning. It's been months since that night, but I still can't shake the feeling that he's out there watching, waiting, and sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear the sound of his footsteps echoing down the empty hallways just like before. Only now, I'm not there to stop him,